At some point in your mid-20s, something happened inside your body that nobody announced. No doctor called. No alarm went off. You didn't feel it. But the biological process that had been building you, strengthening you, optimizing you for survival, quietly shifted direction, and instead of continuing to build, it began, in very small and very measurable ways, to let things slide. This is not a metaphor. It is not pessimism. It is one of the most well-documented and least discussed facts in all of human biology. Your body doesn't age uniformly, all at once, the way a car rusts or a building crumbles. It ages in stages. And the first stage, the one almost nobody talks about, begins somewhere between your 25th and 27th birthday. Not when you're old, not when you feel it. Now, or for many of you listening, already. To understand why this happens, you have to understand what your body was actually designed to do. And the answer, from an evolutionary standpoint, is not what most people assume. Your body was not designed to keep you alive as long as possible. It was designed to keep you alive long enough to reproduce and raise offspring to an age where they can survive independently. Everything beyond that, biologically speaking, was never really the point. Natural selection doesn't care about your retirement. It doesn't care about your 40s, your 50s, your 60s. It cares about whether your genes made it into the next generation. Once that job is done, the maintenance budget, the resources your body allocates to repair, to defend, to rebuild, begins to quietly decrease. Evolutionary biologist Thomas Kirkwood at the University of Newcastle called this the disposable soma theory. The body, he argued, is essentially a vehicle for the genes. A useful, sophisticated vehicle, but a vehicle nonetheless. And like any machine running on limited resources, it has to make trade-offs. Every calorie spent on long-term cellular maintenance is a calorie not spent on reproduction. So natural selection, over millions of years, optimized for reproduction first and longevity second. The result is a body that is extraordinarily good at building itself up through adolescence, peaks somewhere in the early to mid-20s, and then begins a gradual, systematic, measurable process of decline. Now, here is where it gets specific, because this isn't vague. Researchers can measure exactly what starts changing, and when. Bone density, the structural architecture of your skeleton, peaks around age 30 and begins declining from there. But the processes that ultimately lead to that decline, the gradual shift in the balance between bone-building cells and bone-absorbing cells, begin in the mid-20s. Muscle mass and muscle fiber quality begin their slow decline from approximately age 25, a process called sarcopenia. You don't notice it at first because the change is too small, but the measurements are clear. The lens of your eye, which must flex to focus on near objects, begins losing elasticity around age 25. The reason most people need reading glasses by their mid-40s isn't that something suddenly broke. It's that a process that started 20 years earlier finally crossed a threshold where it became noticeable. Your maximum heart rate, the ceiling of what your cardiovascular system can achieve under full exertion, declines by approximately 1 beat per minute every year after your 20th birthday. By the time you are 40, your cardiovascular ceiling is measurably and significantly lower than it was at 20. Your skin begins producing less collagen from around age 25, roughly 1% less per year. The lines that eventually appear on your face in your 30s are the accumulated result of a process that began before you were old enough to worry about aging. The immune system, perhaps most strikingly of all, begins a process called immunosenescence, a gradual reduction in the efficiency of immune response that starts, by some measures, in early adulthood. Your body's ability to recognize and destroy novel threats, to mount a full inflammatory response, to surveil for early cancer cells, begins its long, slow decline while most people are still arguing about whether they need sunscreen. Now, none of this means you are falling apart at 25. The changes are gradual. They are quiet. They accumulate over decades before they become visible or felt. And the human body has enormous compensatory capacity, which is why the process is so invisible for so long. But here is what's important. The choices you make in your 20s, the exercise you do or don't do, the sleep you protect or sacrifice, the food you choose, the stress you manage or ignore, are not just lifestyle choices. They are negotiations with a biological process that has already begun. Every year of physical training in your 20s adds to a reserve that your body will spend in the decades ahead. Every year of sedentary life, of disrupted sleep, of chronic stress without recovery, accelerates a timeline that is already running. Stanford longevity researcher Laura Carstensen has spent decades studying how people age and what determines the quality of their later years. One of her clearest findings is that the people who age best are not the people who started thinking about it at 60. They are the people who lived their 30s, 40s, and 50s in ways that maintained what they built in their 20s. The window is not closed. The body remains responsive to input at every age. Exercise at 60 still builds muscle. Sleep at 50 still clears the cellular debris that accumulates in the brain during waking hours. The biology is not a verdict. It is a negotiation. But here is what nobody tells you when you're 23 and feel invincible and recover from a bad night's sleep in a day and eat whatever you want and bounce back from everything. You're at the peak, right now, or just past it. The machinery is as good as it will ever be. The repair systems are running at maximum efficiency. The inflammation clears fast. The bones are dense. The muscles respond quickly. The immune system is sharp. And because it all feels so effortless, because you don't have to think about any of it, because it just works, most people do nothing with it. They spend the years when their body is most capable doing the least to preserve it. And then, a decade or two later, they wonder why the machine is slower, stiffer, harder to maintain. Biogerontologist Aubrey de Grey, one of the most controversial and interesting thinkers in the field of aging science, argues that aging is not a natural process to be accepted, but an engineering problem to be solved. He is working on that. The science is real and moving. But even he acknowledges that in the meantime, the single most powerful intervention available to any human being right now is simple, unglamorous, and almost universally underused. Move your body. Protect your sleep. Manage chronic stress. Eat food that supports repair rather than degrading it. Not because it will stop the process. Nothing stops the process. But because the gap between how well a well-maintained body ages and how poorly a neglected body ages is, by the time you reach your 50s and 60s, enormous. You are a biological machine of extraordinary complexity, and right now, in your 20s or 30s, you're running closer to factory settings than you ever will again. The question is not whether the decline will come. It will. The question is what you hand it to work with. Because the body that starts declining at 25 is not sealed and finished. It is being written every day by choices that feel too small to matter right now and turn out to be the most important ones you ever made. Right now, while you're reading this, your body is doing what it has always done. Repairing, replacing, maintaining, working quietly on your behalf without being asked. The only question is whether you're working with it.